Well, hello, I'm Dr. Kevin Lenton. Thanks for joining me as I just share some of my perspective around the last kind of couple of months or so that's been going on globally. So for sure, it's been a tough time, right? We've all experienced some kind of hardship. I agree, some way more than others. And for some, this whole lockdown episode has been somewhat fulfilling. We've learned a lot, we've changed behavior patterns, we've learned a lot of new things, had quality time with children. So in many ways, there have been many positives that have come out of this whole pandemic. So what I just wanted to share with you is that it would be so sad that if all of these gains that have been made on a global level come to naught. So certainly we know that on a macro level, that's on a planetary level, on a global scale, there have been incredible changes and improvements to the planet just as a result of decreased pollution, and we've seen many examples of the animals coming back and roaming more freely, and there's been so many changes that have manifest as incredible positives. And on a micro level, which really refers to you and I, the same thing has happened. As I said, there have been many positives. I did a very short Facebook survey a few days ago where I just put the comment out there, is there anybody that's actually enjoying lockdown, that's finding it of some benefit? And there were many responses that said, yes, we're having so much more fun, kids' times, quality time, learning to bake, learning new business skills, learning new online strategies for our business. And in fact, many people are having a lot of fun in spite of it being trying in many ways, and we know that for sure. So yes, the world has changed and continues to change, and as many people have said, it will never be the same again. The sad thing for me, though, is that it would be such an indictment, really, if we all just returned to the same old normal, just go right back to where we were to begin with. And that's what put us all in a mess, really, to start with, I guess. So I'd like to just share with you a few of my perspectives and what I've called the law of threes. And there's two sets of three criteria that I think are really important and worth bearing in mind. And I hope that with me sharing this, you might come to understand them a little bit more and put them into perspective in your own life. So with any behavior, there has to be a stimulus that creates that behavior to start with. Even the smallest of things, going shopping, for example, there is a stimulus. You need something from the shops. So you go shopping. That's the kind of stimulus that gets you going. A big railway carriage standing stationary on a railway track, it needs some stimulus to get it going. It needs to be pushed or pulled in some way to create that stimulus to get the carriage moving. And of course, there are many examples of things that need inspiration. You get inspired to cook something, and sometimes they're not things that you consciously realize that you've been inspired by, because they become so natural. They're just everyday things, and you don't even think that there's a process to the behavior that actually manifests itself. You have to go through a very kind of structured program, if you like. And because these programs have been ingrained in us, in our subconscious mind, so indelibly, they're so easy. I mean, we don't actually even have to think about the fact that, we get in our car and we go here, we prepare supper, we do all of the normal things that we do all the time. And those are so easy, and they're easy because they're in our comfort zone, and we're so used to them. And as humans, generally, unfortunately, we don't like change, in spite of the old Japanese principle, the Kaizen principle that says, continue to move forward. Continue to look for change, actually. Because change is good. Change means that we're growing in some way. And many of us, we're happy to grow up to a point. We don't mind being nudged and having a stimulus pushing us to some extent. But once it gets a little bit too far out of our comfort zone, that's when we start to push back, and it starts to feel really uncomfortable. And that's when we're in a state of, dis-ease. And that's what we're seeing, certainly with the coronavirus. For so many people, this is something so new. The corona is the stimulus in this case. It's caused tremendous global upheaval on so many different levels. But sometimes one has to just reassess and relook at that stimulus and say, is it really that bad? And I don't for 1 minute want to belittle the fact that there is a lot of hardship and trauma out there caused by this, economic and personal, and every way there's trauma. But what would really be sad is if we didn't learn from this. And yes, medically they're learning, I understand that. But it comes more down to an individual level, that micro level. Are we learning? Are we going to be able to change our behaviors and sustain that change such that it benefits us in the long run? The only way that we really grow is through change. If you're in the same place all the time, your life becomes pretty humdrum, pretty much of a rut that you're in. Same behavior all day long, every day, day in and day out. And so we stay pretty much stagnated. So when it comes to behavior change, there are really 3 scenarios, and these are my first law of 3s. You can have a lose-lose scenario with a behavior of some sort. So lose-lose, we've got the corona, and yeah, it is a lose initial stimulus for sure in many ways. But do we have to completely focus on the loss component of it, on the trauma component of it? For many of us, and even though there have been many people, millions around the world affected, it hasn't necessarily affected each and every one person personally, from a health perspective I'm talking about. So yes, we could see the corona as a lose, but also with a slight change of focus, you can see it as a win. So first you have the lose-lose situation where corona's a lose and you end up losing because you spend all your time focusing on the trauma of it. And we've seen anxiety levels increasing. We've seen levels of worry and depression, and the reaction to this whole thing as being just catastrophic. We catastrophize it way more than it actually is. We perceive the reality before it's even become real. They're constantly referring to the fact that millions of people are going to die. Well, we don't know that. We haven't seen that yet, that's for sure. Not millions and millions of people. So we could turn this into a lose-lose. It's a bad state, and we get ourselves into more and more of a downward spiral that makes us sick, whether it's from corona or whether it's from some other kind of stress or the worry and the anxiety. That also is it's a silent killer for sure. We know that. It upregulates much of our stress chemistry, and that will definitely have an effect along the way. It might take some time before it actually manifests, but it will. So that's the lose-lose. The other scenario, of course, is a lose-win scenario. So lose, the corona is a lose situation, not great at all, but you as an individual and we see that there's some potential change, good change and positive change that can happen and take place as a result of this. So we start working at it in a different way. We engage more with other people, family, friends, kids. We learn to cook more. We learn new business strategies, as I've said, start focusing in different ways. And so it becomes a win for us. So yes, the virus is bad, but we have created a win scenario out of it. The trouble is, though, that these behavior patterns, seeing this as a win, it has to become indelibly ingrained into the subconscious part of your brain. That subconscious part is how we live our lives. That's where we have the experience. All the memory and experience that you've ever had is locked into the frontal cortex of your brain. And that's how we behave from the memories and experiences that are locked into this frontal cortex. So we haven't had long enough yet. It seems like it's been forever, I know. But in South Africa, we're coming up, I think it's 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks perhaps. But that's not long enough for behavior patterns to be reprogrammed in the subconscious. So what could happen is when lockdown changes and we slowly but surely start to return to some semblance of normal, we default to our old patterns. Those are ingrained. Those we've been doing for years and years and years. Same old way of doing business that, to be honest, hasn't really served us that well in many ways. So my real area of expertise is in health and wellness. That's my background over the last 37 years, is the promotion of health. And unfortunately, what we're seeing and what we have seen is that it hasn't really worked. The world has been getting sicker, not only with disease, diabetes and heart disease and cancer and autoimmune disease and neurodegenerative disease. We're seeing that exploding. But metabolic disease, where we're just not healthy on the inside. Glucose levels are too high, your cholesterol levels are too high. We're seeing metabolic dysfunction, and that means the metabolism, the cells are not talking nicely to each other. So it certainly hasn't been working at all. So we don't want to default back to that old pattern, which is just going to create the same old thing, and we're going to continue just getting sicker and sicker. However, to create a win-win situation, which is the third scenario, that's going to take a little bit of work for each and every one of us. So the win is that we see the coronavirus as a tremendously important catalyst or stimulus, push or pull to get us to change behavior patterns. And we start to adopt those behavior patterns. We practice over and over new behavior patterns. So whatever it might be, if it's online business, you start to actually get used to it eventually, and it becomes a new folder in your subconscious brain, if you like, and it becomes normal. That becomes now your new comfort zone, and that's absolutely critical to the change in behavior patterns. And I know from countless consultations with thousands and thousands of clients and patients over the years that we really don't believe that we can achieve this change until we actually do achieve it. We say, you know what, it actually wasn't so bad. It was a bit tough in the beginning. Change is always a little bit difficult and a little bit rocky as we start the whole process. But once it becomes more the norm, the new norm, it becomes much easier. So my first 3 laws, if you like, the lose-lose situation, try and avoid that at all costs. The lose-win situation, it's no good just having one side of the situation lose. If you haven't changed your belief around the corona, it will come back and you will find that you will default to the old behavior patterns. So we need to strive and really need to make an effort in many different ways to strive towards creating this win-win situation. So those are my 3 first laws that you need to strive towards. Everything, not only around corona, any adversity that we are faced with at any time will go through these 3 stages. And your and my job to constantly strive towards is that win-win situation. How can you eke out a win-win relationship to whatever happens, no matter what trauma? We've seen it time and time again in people that have been retrenched or had traumatic events in their life. They turn it into a win. People that have been abused become motivational speakers and they share their story with the world. They turn a terrible loss situation into a win situation for them. People lose their jobs and they feel devastated by the fact that they are retrenched, find a new job and think, why didn't I leave that old job years ago? I'm much happier and more fulfilled in this particular job. So strive for that win-win situation. But now once we get into that win-win, once we adopt that kind of, yes, that's what I'd like to do, I've got to strive for win-win, it then becomes another process that we have to go through in order to realize this win-win, to really make it cellular, so that everything in your body responds to this state of well-being. And that's why I've created my Fast Forward Focus 6-week program to actually help and encourage and share techniques and practical tips as to how one can actually build and create this win-win. It doesn't just happen. We prefer to default back to our old easy comfort zone patterns. So I've developed this, what I think is a significant program to help people, to coach people really and mentor people to get them through this state from lose-win to for sure win-win situation. But the next set of 3 things that one needs to adopt if you're halfway interested in exploring this. Firstly, there has to be an inspiration. You have to be inspired. Nothing happens unless there's first some kind of inspiration to do that. And innately, our body is designed to seek an end. It really wants to seek a result in some way. And so you need to find and fine-tune that desire to get to that point, not give up too soon. So you need inspiration. There's a lovely quote by an Indian sage by the name of Patanjali, and I'd like to just read it to you. When you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be greater and a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. So it is quite incredible if you truly focus on this inspiration. And from where I'm talking at this stage, that inspiration is to create the win-win from this particular scenario that we find ourselves in at the moment. Inspiration is incredibly empowering. I mean, we're inspired all day, every day to do things, to pop down to the shop to get this, to cook, as I say, but to be truly inspired to move out of your comfort zone, that takes a little bit more work, and that takes a little bit more effort, because you have to apply the processes of neuroplasticity, where your brain can actually create new neurons and drive a new pathway to a different folder in your brain that says, actually, I can do this. And that takes work. And there are a number of techniques which I share in my 6-week program. So there are 2 other laws that I'd like to share with you. But I'd like to hold the next one over until tomorrow, where I'll again share with you the second law that you need to truly internalize in order to make the inspiration a reality. So I'd like to share that with you in my next presentation. But it's been great chatting. I hope you've found some interest in this. If you'd like to get hold of me, please send me an email to coach, C-O-A-C-H, at Dr. Dr. Kevin Lenton .life. Coach at DrKevinLentin.life, L-I-F-E. Send me a mail. I'll be more than happy to chat. I also have the facility where you can do a quick free discovery call with me. And we can chat about some of these things and see if they might apply to you and how you might be able to include them in your life. Otherwise, go to my website. Again, drkevinlenton.life. That's drkevinlenton.life. And there's links there where you can join my mailing list, and you can actually book a discovery call with me if you'd like to. So I look forward to hearing from you. Other than that, have a great day, and we'll chat further very soon.